Welcome to Dating Deja Vu, the podcast where we dive into your pitfalls, your patterns, and your personal growth of modern dating. I'm Christina Hathaway, marriage and family therapist and dating and relationship expert. And let's be real, if your love life feels like a constant battle of bad decisions and common patterns, then you're in the right place. In today's episode, we dive into the 10 most common patterns that keep people stuck dating the same person over and over again. I'm just going to call them out as they are. So if you're ready to figure out if it's deja vu or if it's you, let's get started. What is up, guys? Happy Groundhog's Day. It is February 2nd, 2025, and our very first full episode. And by we, I mean me. Hi, guys. I'm Christina Hathaway. I am your host. I'm a marriage and family therapist and dating and relationship coach and owner of two amazing coaching companies, Ignite Ambition Coaching, which I think we should just change to Dating Deja Vu Coaching. You guys give me your thoughts on that. And the Mindset of Matter, which is a whole health coaching program. And today I am going to be walking you through the 10 patterns that keep you stuck in relationships. These are the patterns that I see my clients being stuck in, and they just play this movie over and over and over again. And for some of them, they say, well, this person's just attracted to me. Bad boys are just attracted to me. Or, as I used to say, fixer-uppers are just attracted to me. But in all reality, you are attracting these people to you. And so after today, I want you to be able to walk away and say, okay, I'm one of these 10, and use all the information we talk about in this podcast to help break out of that pattern. So how do we create these patterns in the first place? Because I don't want you guys to walk away from this feeling like really shitty about yourself. Everything we do relationally has really come from our upbringing. And that's our relationship with our parents or our caregivers, early childhood development. So how we created friendships, if we had siblings, if we did not have siblings, any trauma that happened to us. And I want to point out one thing about the word trauma. Now, a lot of people think trauma, they think these big T's. So abuse, they think war, right? Like veterans. When I talk about trauma, and most common trauma is the small t traumas. And the way I like to explain it is it's something that happened to you, that you created a story about yourself that has negatively impacted you throughout your life. It's not what happens to us. It's what we make up about ourselves that creates trauma. So if you think about someone who has been, assaulted, the story they make up is, I am not safe. I cannot protect myself, right? Whereas someone else who's been assaulted says, I am safe. I've taken these classes. I can defend myself. Those two people are going to have a very different experience. It's not necessarily what happens to us. It's the story we make up about ourselves. And when it comes to relationships, our families, our parents are the people who create our attachment, whether that's a biological parent, adoptive parent, a parent fill-in. Those are the people who create attachment. And attachment actually is created very early on in the womb, and then through touch, through sound, through eye contact with our parents. Then from there, our attachment grows based on our interaction with our parents. Now, I don't know about you, but my parents went through hell when I was a child. My mom had a very, very tough upbringing, and that upbringing did not result in healthy emotional regulation skills, nor really a example of how to be a regulated parent. Now, she tried her very, very best, but she only had the tools that were in her toolbox. Plus, my mom lost her mother when I was very young. And there was a series of events that happened that had a toll on my mom. And as a child, I just wanted her to be happy. And so when I would perform, because I was a dancer my whole life, my mom would be happy. But when I was having emotion, she almost couldn't handle it. And she handled it in negative ways. And so I learned how to kind of disguise my behavior and manipulate my feelings, how I acted, to either make her happy or pull the attention on me so I could take the brunt of everything. And I did not realize that until my own journey. And that caretaking, this kind of changing who I was to make someone else happy, then went on into the rest of my life. I mean, it just seeped into all of my other relationships until my early 30s, where I finally got a hold of it. And so that's where these patterns that I'm going to talk about today occur. And I have my phone out. I usually going to have a iPad, but I forgot to charge it. So I want you to walk away. The reason I tell you my story, a smidge of it, is I want you to have compassion for yourself, that these patterns have actually created a sense of security in you. It's protected you in a way. So if you're someone who feels like, so say you're someone like my mom, who never really could express her emotions to her family of origin, well, you may date someone who is emotionally unavailable, because that protects you from the thing that you're not familiar with, which is emotional expression. Even though you want to do it, you want to have that emotional connection, but you don't have the skills in yourself to do it. And so you almost attract to you someone who is equally emotionally unavailable, even though in your brain you think, I want someone emotional who shares their feelings and so on and so forth. So let's get into the 10 patterns that keep you stuck in dating deja vu. The first one is, as I said, dating someone who is the first one, as I said, is dating someone who's emotionally unavailable. And this is when we're choosing a partner who's unwilling or able to commit. And it's a very one-sided relationship where the other person's emotional needs are not met. Now, the emotionally unavailable person's needs are met, but they're not reciprocating that. And so, this is the person who you're kind of on their schedule, right? They tell you where you're going to meet up. They don't necessarily go out of their way to come see you where you're at. They maybe only see you at certain times of the day. They're not as willing to have those conversations. They interact because they want to keep you around, because remember, it's one-sided. But when it comes to vulnerability, there is none. That intimacy. When I talk about intimacy on this podcast, it's into me, you see. We're talking about our experiences. And in romantic relationships, that intimacy factor is very important. That vulnerability factor, is very important. But if you grew up in a family where emotions were not expressed, and that can be for so many reasons, but you somehow have learned that lack of emotional expression or lack of your ability to express your wants and needs is normal, the unavailable partner is going to feel very familiar to you. So we're going to break each one of these down in its own episode, because I would be on this podcast for 10 hours explaining this, but I want to just plant these little seeds in your head, right? Is, homeboy or homegirl is emotionally unavailable. It's very one-sided. I'm on their schedule. They're not attuned to my needs. I'm even afraid to say to them what I want or need, because I'm afraid that they're going to walk away from me, which I hear all the fucking time. Also, we cuss on this podcast. All right, number 2, trying to fix a partner. Fixer-uppers, baby. Yours truly, Joanna Gaines in the flesh. This is entering a relationship in hopes to transform the partner into a behavior or a lifestyle that you prefer, often rooted in the savior or rescuer dynamic. So, hello, it's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me. This was your girl. I mean, y'all, I have tried to make the manager of Target the fucking president of the United States. I wanted boyfriends to go to school, and I wanted to inspire them to work out, and I wanted to inspire them to get good credit, instead of just finding people like that. But I also thought I had to rescue people. I rescued my mother often, right? I rescued her often without even knowing that I was doing it, but that became familiar to me. And so I would make excuses for guys who just didn't have their shit together when I did. I mean, I bought my first home in my late 20s. I have a graduate degree, obviously an undergrad degree. I was doing well for myself. I had good credit. Like, I wasn't making buku bucks, but I was pretty well established. And I would just make up excuses for them as if, I'll help them. I'll inspire them. Like I'm fucking, Mother Teresa. I don't know. And every single time I was let down. Why? Because I was putting my worth into someone else's behavior or lack thereof. And they did not want what I wanted, because if they did, they would have already done it. Right. And if they hadn't done it and wanted it, then that's something they need to work on. But I decided, hey, I'm going to be the one to save the day. And so if you're making excuses for your partner to why they're just not where they need to be now, I have 2 businesses and we are growing in where I need to be. No, but am I in an amazing place? Absolutely. And my partner is supportive of that. He's not trying to change anything about it. He's supporting me through something that I take charge of. So there's a difference there, right? There's a difference between supporting and wanting to grow versus having this less than ideal version of the person you want to be with in hopes that you will change and inspire them to be that better version of themselves, which we have no control over what other people do, which is going to be a very common theme in this podcast. Okay, next one. Mistaking intensity for love. Let's talk about fireworks, baby. Let's talk about the relationship where you associate passion and drama and turbulence as a genuine connection. I see it all the time. This often leads to this addictive behavior of very highs and very much lows. And I, one of the worst relationships was one that like went right from the beginning. Like it was like a tornado met a volcano, but like in a good way. We just had zero boundaries from the get go. And this shit was so intense and so fireworked and sparkly that it burnt out real quick. And this is something people think is a true connection. And I'm here to tell you something really that might be hurtful. Hopefully, again, you have some compassion for yourself. I'm going to guess you grew up in a chaotic environment. I'm going to guess you run as on like high stress hormones or instability feels familiar. How old do you feel when that person is bringing that turbulence and that drama into your life? Instability feels stable, and that's an issue. And so you yearn for it because our brains can become emotionally addictive to patterns. And if from 0 to 18, probably still to this day, that emotional instability in your family of origin, your safe place, is still there, your brain remembers it and it longs for it, just kind of like it longs for a food that you're addicted to, or nicotine or alcohol, whatever it is that's your vice. And we think connection should feel the same way because the people who are supposed to love and care for us in childhood, they created that turbulence for us. And so love, quote unquote, should be intense. It should have this spark. And we're going to talk about in an episode in the next coming weeks about how boring is like the new like green flag, because when it's big, when it's intense, when it's all the fireworks all at once, all up front, that is a huge, huge red flag. And I want you to think about, why does that feel so comfortable to me? So that is number 3. Next one is when we're kind of just attracted to a similar dysfunction. So this one might not be as common, but I do see this where we subconsciously choose partners who kind of mirror our own shit. And I'll see this with people who have been like in treatment, where they'll get into relationships with other people in treatment. People who have eating disorders get in relationship with other people with eating disorders. And it's kind of this like trauma bond over their sickness. And it doesn't have to be that serious. I mean, it could be, even just two people who are very negative minded getting into a relationship. So I'm not going to get too much into this one, because unless someone calls in and says, no, actually, I want to hear about that, we tend, misery loves company. And we think that people won't relate to us if we tell them our truths. And so we try to find someone who has a similar experience as us in an effort to be seen and heard, when in all reality, we can be seen and heard. We can be intimate and vulnerable with someone who hasn't gone through what we've gone through. No one goes through everything that you've gone through, and we still connect. But you think in your mind that I'll only be good enough if that person has the same experience as me. Even war, right? Veterans, can get in relationship with each other because of that camaraderie, even that was created in battle. So that is number 4. Number 5, prioritizing chemistry over compatibility. So this is focusing on that instant attraction, so that spark, but we're not necessarily talking about that turbulence and drama. Instead of shared values, goals, so on. So I think about a lot of these dating shows, like the Love Islands, like the Bachelor, where there's this, or Too Hot to Handle, right? Where it's really about attraction first, right? So that chemistry, that lust. And someone could be hot as fuck and not align with your values and morals. They could hate puppies, and we hate them because this is a puppy friendly show. But you in your mind think, oh, they're so hot and I'm so sexually attracted to them and we have the best sex ever. People use that excuse, but the sex is so good. That's great. He hates puppies. Come on. Like, what are we doing here? Right. And that chemistry is mistaken for compatibility. Compatibility is, to me, sharing a similar value system. Y'all don't have to have the same interests. Now, my husband and I have similar interests, and then we have things we do on our own. He loves to play like games on his phone, where I love to manifest and meditate on my phone, right? And I do play games, but I play New York Times, where he's playing like Formula One games. My husband's a huge Formula One fan. But also goals, right? Your goals, or the way you set goals, the way you obtain goals, should be similar, right? Because again, if we go back to the fixer-upper, their goals and our goals are not the same. And we should have the same emotional intelligence or emotional maturity. And being hot as fuck doesn't give you any of that. Now, you could be hot and have all of these things, but we need to decipher between chemistry and compatibility. And we'll stay in relationships just because someone is hot. Or here's another one I see, because they have some sort of status. I've seen women stay in relationships with professional athletes simply because they're an athlete and that's really attractive, but the guy's cheating on her the whole time and she's devastated about it. But he obviously is. So that goes back to unavailable, but also his goals for relationship are not the same. We are not the same, right? So awesome. Number 6, y'all, fear of being alone. But I'll be alone. And what if nobody wants me? And then I'm going to be alone until I'm, 100 years old. And we go into this catastrophizing and future tripping about your loneliness, as if being alone is something that you're going to die. And this is very common for someone who had a parent who was overly enmeshed with the child, or the helicopter parent where they did everything for you. I'm talking the parent who wrote your homework, right? Did your essays, did the whatever, talk to the teacher if they were being unfair. Like, you did not learn a sense of autonomy, and you learned that you had to depend on other people to tell you how to think, feel, do. And being alone means you have no sense of identity. And that feels very, very scary. However, you can build that in yourself, and you don't need right now, if you're trying to build it while being with someone else, you're going to be really dependent on them. We call this a love addict. Okay. The love addict thinks if I'm not in relationship with someone else, I will die. And they're kind of that anxious attachment. They're very anxious. They're very needy. They put a lot of pressure on the other person because they're so afraid of abandonment and being alone that they then cause the demise of their relationship, which we will talk about. And we are never alone. I'm a big believer in some sort of higher self, right? Like whether you're religious or not, I think there's something bigger and greater than us that pushes us forward and at minimum makes the sun rise and the sun set. The flowers die and grow back, that's something bigger than me. I'll tell you that right now. And when I connect people with that higher self, whatever that looks like, it could be your pet, I don't care. You realize you're never alone, right? And your worth is in your existence, not in, being with someone else. And this one's really difficult, but we will talk about it in the next coming episodes. All right. So this one can tend to bleed into some of the others, but just kind of ignoring red flags from the get-go, right? So you are rationalizing concerning behaviors, right? You are, again, maybe more attracted to that person. You have a lot of optimism, or you maybe just desire to avoid conflict altogether, leading to repeated mistakes. I used to do this, and I used to, as I had already mentioned, not talk about things that bothered me because I was afraid that the other person would get upset. However, if it's a red flag, it's a red flag. And we need to either set a boundary with the person directly, or we need to leave, right? But we will justify it and rationalize it and make up excuses for the person's behavior. Oh, he only drinks on the weekends with his boys, but he drinks every single night, right? Oh, well, every time we go out, he tends to forget his wallet and I pay for everything, right? No, we're not paying for everything. We're not paying for nothing, but we're not paying for that, right? And you don't say anything. And again, this goes back to your inability in upbringing to speak your wants and needs, to set boundaries. Or you did do that and you were treated like shit, right? I remember voicing my wants and needs and it becoming this, oh, I'm the worst mother ever. Oh, like it became about her instead of my wants and needs. So I just didn't do it, right? Or if I did it big. I did it screaming, yelling, like, you will see me, right? However, that's the opposite of this person. This person is going to brush everything under the rug. Again, another family of origin pattern. We never talked about any conflicts, and mom and dad pretended like everything was okay until they ended up divorced, right? Or y'all never sat down and had serious conversations because it was too awkward or nobody knew how to do it, or we just pretended like everything was fine, right? And so we avoid those red flags. We rationalize and justify them until we're, heartbroken, wondering how we got here. So again, we're going to talk about that in detail. All right. We have 3 more: recreating trauma bonds, feeling connected to partners through shared chaos and unhealthy dynamics, often stemming from childhood patterns of earning love. So one of the biggest trauma bonds that I'll talk about, one I've already touched on, is the love addict, love avoidance dance, as I call it. We have one person whose family taught them to be very dependent on other people. If they're not in a relationship, they feel like they will die. Whereas the other person is the person who comes from a family where everyone dependent on them, and to be in a relationship feels like they are being suffocated. And these two tend to trauma bond often, but they have this yin and yang, right? And I'm going to walk you guys through that dance in the upcoming episode so you can recognize it. Whenever I teach this to my clients, they're like, holy shit. And surprisingly, more women who think they're love addicts actually become love avoidance, because women are such caretakers. People depend on them. And when they try to leave the relationships because the person's so needy, and needy can be a variety of different things, they feel bad about it, right? But the trauma bonds are basically being in a relationship that keeps your trauma and that fight, flight, freeze, or please going in your body. You create conflict because it's, needs to be there because that's what you're familiar with. So basically, number 8 can be like taking all of the ones we've already talked about and creating patterns that kind of fit like Legos, where you have one person from one side, the avoidant side, another person from the other side, the anxious side. And now we're creating this Lego that fits together. Now, then you step on it. So good luck with that. All right. Number 9 is prioritizing others, over prioritizing others' needs. So this kind of bleeds into some of the things we talked about, as I mentioned, but being overly self-sacrificing and neglecting your own needs and boundaries in an effort to attract partners who basically take without reciprocating. So this is that caretaker mentality, the people-pleasing mentality, where you will think about everyone else but yourself, right? So you're giving and giving and giving and not receiving. The problem with that is that pattern and it feels terrible to you. And that pattern is not coming from a place of love and safety and connection. So then you again become very resentful towards people not taking care of you. However, because no one's ever taken care of you, you don't trust people to take care of you. So you don't actually allow people to create an opportunity to take care of you. I've done this many times. I have to tell my friends, I'm going to practice reaching out for help. It's hilarious. And I get this insane. I rationalize the shit out of things. I rationalize why I can't text my best friend about something that's bothering me. And I will write out a whole text and then delete it and be like, she's busy. It's so bad. I do have a couple friends that I'm working on this with. They're, as I call my new friends. I have friends that are 20 years old. And then I have friends that I just met in the last like 5 to, I would say, since 2018, right? So whatever that is, 7 years. But yeah, overtizing everyone else's needs. So this can be as simple as like just doing dumb shit that you don't like to do. And you're like miserable because you don't like football, but you're going to the bar and watching football every week and you're pretending like you like it and you're creating resentment towards your partner. Or sexually, you might be doing things that you don't feel comfortable with, but you're doing it because that's what they want. And you can see how this can get really messy. All right. Last but not least, chasing that external validation in partners. And by the way, you can be more than one of these. Choosing partners who look good on paper or meet societal standards rather than fostering genuine emotional connection. So again, going back to athletes, maybe physicians, like people in like higher positions, people who maybe drive nice cars, dress a certain way, right? That external validation, or even like the trophy wife, the trophy girlfriend. It's, I have this person, they look this way, or they're in this position. So that obviously shows you that I'm good too. You're creating a sense of worth out of who this person is rather than innately, like inside. Your worth is inherent. It's there when you're born. It's there before you're born. People love you before you're freaking born and you don't do shit, right? But again, I see this a lot with women, that they'll have this kind of checklist of what the guy needs to look like, what his, salary should be. And it has nothing to do with connection. But if he can just have his shit together, then great. I'm going to tell you a great story about one of my dating clients who's now marrying the guy that I told her she should marry, because she's a very successful lawyer. And she thought, well, I need to be with someone who's equally as successful. But all the guys that were as successful didn't create that. What she needed was someone to actually, rub her feet when she got home and help around the house and, take care of things that she can't take care of. And she ended up marrying the guy who they bought a house, I believe, a couple of years ago, who was the handyman for her building. He had his own business. But I was always like, what about him? And she's like, no way, never could I ever date a handyman. Well, she was wrong. So So there we go, guys. Those are the top 10. If I've missed one, I'm sure I'm going to bring a lot of shit up over the course of these episodes and this podcast. But again, we have dating emotionally unavailable partners, trying to fix and or change a partner, mistaken intensity for love, attracting a familiar dysfunction, prioritizing chemistry over compatibility, fear of being alone, ignoring red flags early on, recreating trauma bonds, over prioritizing others' needs, and chasing external validation in partners. So I want to just add one piece of this that I see with a lot of my coaching clients is that women will tend to show up as this one version of themselves that tends to attract men to them. And for one of them, we called it her sparkle. Like she'd always show up very sparkly, and like guys obviously were attracted to her. She is very successful, but she would be this like sparkle, like, look how great I am. I can take care of myself. I can take care of you. The problem though with that is the guys would be attracted to her as if like she was super, like there was no issue, right? She was problemless, if you will. And she's not. She has emotions. And then when she'd have emotions, they'd freak out because they were wanting this kind of take care of me, helicopter partner. And that's not who she is. And then she'd start getting very resentful towards them. I see that a lot where I show up in this way. Another one of my clients shows up as like, oh no, I got it. Everything's, and that's kind of the people pleasing, right? Oh no, I got it. I'll take care of it. And like, is so conflict avoidant that she will get herself in these positions where guys just take and take and take from her. And her current relationship doesn't do that. And he kind of pushes her and is like, no, you tell me what you want. And she's finally working, as we work together, being able to say, this is what I want, or not having to control things too, which we'll talk about as well. So again, these are just the 10 that I wrote down. There's probably 75 of them. We'll talk about them in every episode of Dating Deja Vu, including Dating Deja Vu, which is where we break down relationships on reality TV so you can kind of see these patterns working. Now, again, I don't know these individuals. I'm just watching them as characters on TV, but I love it because it gives us kind of this view because, again, art can imitate life and drama's fun. And I love reality TV, so why not add it to my podcast? So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode today. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so that you do not miss the next episodes. If you loved this information or you need to send it to that one girlfriend or guy friend, please share this episode or give us a 5-star rating and review. For more tips, behind the scenes, fun, and how to slide into my DMs to ask your dating and relationship questions, follow me on Instagram or YouTube at Dating Deja Vu. So thanks again for listening. And remember, it might be deja vu, but it also might be you. Goodbye.